Hi everyone, welcome back. I hope you're all taking care of yourselves and having a gentle week so far. Today we are stepping into a case that explores the absolute deepest, most agonizing nightmare a parent can ever face. When we look at true crime, we often try to trace the signs. We ask what the parents missed, what happened behind closed doors, or if the cracks were always visible. But what happens when a devoted father does absolutely everything right, only to realize that the child he raised, the boy he tucked into bed, has hidden a ruthless predator beneath his skin? This is the deeply tragic, chilling story of Arthur and his son, Thomas. To the community, Arthur was a pillars of the neighborhood kind of man. He was a dedicated, loving father who spent years coaching Little League, attending school plays, and trying to instill a strong moral compass in his son, Thomas. Thomas grew up looking completely ordinary. He was quiet, relatively well-mannered, and blended seamlessly into the background of his high school classes. He didn't torture animals. He didn't set fires. He wore normal clothes and smiled in family photographs. But as Thomas transitioned into his early 20s, the quietness Arthur always assumed was just teenage shyness began to curdle into something rigid and cold. Arthur noticed that his son's eyes had a strange, hollow quality, a complete absence of empathy when tragedies played out on the evening news. Arthur brushed it off, comforting himself with the thought that young men sometimes struggle to express their feelings. He had no idea that beneath that mask of suburban innocence, Thomas was already mapping out a dark, predatory world, selecting targets in the local community, and preparing to unleash an absolute wave of terror. The nightmare began to materialize in the summer of 2003 in a quiet, rural valley just a few miles from the family's home. It started with a sudden, inexplicable disappearance. A 22-year-old college student named Rachel Vance went out for her evening jog along a popular nature trail and simply vanished into thin air. Her car was found parked neatly at the trailhead, her keys still inside the console. The community launched a massive, frantic search. Arthur even volunteered, walking shoulder to shoulder with his neighbors through the thick brush, praying for a miracle. Thomas, however, refused to join the search, claiming he had to work extra shifts at his contracting job. 6 months later, another young woman, 24-year-old Sarah Jenkins, disappeared after leaving a local diner late at night. The pattern was terrifying, but the police were entirely baffled. There were no witnesses, no forensic trails, and no obvious connections between the victims. A quiet cloud of paranoia settled over the valley. Women stopped walking alone, and porch lights stayed on through the night. Inside his home, Arthur began to notice a series of deeply unsettling changes in his son. Thomas began staying out until the early hours of the morning, returning home with muddy boots and an erratic, highly defensive attitude. Whenever Arthur gently questioned where he had been, Thomas would explode into a terrifying, uncharacteristic rage, slamming doors and pacing his bedroom floor for hours. By the winter of 2005, the heavy, unsaid tension inside the house had become completely unbearable for Arthur. The breaking point arrived on a rainy Saturday afternoon while Thomas was away on a weekend trip. Arthur went into the family garage to look for a specific wrench to fix a leaking pipe. As he searched through the back shelves, he noticed a large, heavy steel toolbox tucked away in a corner, buried beneath a dusty canvas tarp. It was secured with a massive, heavy-duty padlock. Arthur had never seen this toolbox before, and a strange, overwhelming protective instinct told him that something was profoundly wrong. Using a crowbar from his workbench, Arthur broke the lock and lifted the heavy steel lid. What he found inside didn't just break his heart, it completely shattered his reality. Resting inside the velvet lining were several driver's licenses belonging to Rachel Vance and Sarah Jenkins, alongside locks of hair, unique silver jewelry items, and a detailed, handwritten journal written in Thomas's neat cursive. The pages contained graphic, sadistically detailed descriptions of the final moments of multiple missing women. Arthur collapsed against his workbench, gasping for air as the chilling truth settled into his chest. His son was the monster terrorizing the valley. In that agonizing moment, Arthur was faced with a choice that no parent should ever have to make. He could destroy the evidence, protect his flesh and blood, and keep the secret buried forever. Or he could stand up for the innocent young women whose lives had been brutally stolen. Arthur packed the contents of the toolbox into his car, drove straight to the local police precinct, and demanded to speak to the lead homicide detective. When Arthur laid the licenses and the journals onto the metal table, the room went completely dead silent. The detectives were in absolute shock. Within hours, a tactical unit swarmed Thomas's location, arresting him without incident as he pulled into a local grocery store parking lot. During the grueling trial that followed, Arthur did something incredibly brave, yet completely devastating. He took the witness stand to testify against his own son. He looked directly into the gallery, his voice breaking with a profound, raw grief as he called Thomas a monster in plain sight. He told the jury that while he loved the boy Thomas used to be, the creature sitting at the defense table had to be permanently removed from society to protect the rest of the world. Thomas was ultimately convicted of multiple counts of first-degree murder and sentenced to consecutive life terms without the possibility of parole. Thomas remains locked away inside a maximum security prison, completely removed from the world he tried to destroy. But for Arthur, the sentence is a permanent daily wait. He successfully stopped a serial killer, a heroic act of civic duty that undoubtedly saved dozens of other young women from a horrific fate. Yet, the victory brought zero peace to his home. Arthur lives a quiet, reclusive life today, carrying the heavy burden of a father's broken heart. He gave up his own son to restore justice to a community that had been paralyzed by fear. This case stands as a profoundly moving, somber reminder of the immense courage it takes to look past the bonds of family to do what is right. Arthur chose truth over blood, ensuring that the names of the victims would be honored and that a predator would never strike again. I want to know what you guys think about Arthur's extraordinary, heartbreaking choice. How does a parent even begin to heal after discovering the kind of darkness inside their own home? Let's talk about it down in the comments below, and please, let's keep the discussion deeply respectful of Arthur and the victims' families. Thank you so much for watching. Take care of yourselves, and I'll see you in the next deep dive. Bye.